Dear Diamonds and fellow Diamonds in the Rough, JIHNSI is finally here, or as I like to call her, Inhibitor Lunisha. As things are right now, and I do believe this kinda is gonna be future-proof, she's gonna be the strongest DPS, probably for 1.0 until we reach 2.0. I think characters that typically have dragons, which is very symbolic in the Chinese culture, they're regarded as divine beings, etc. They're typically going to be well treated, as we see, for example, from Jian and Mortefia. Now, for JIHNSI, I do believe she's going to be quite future-proof. She seems to be a very powerful unit that gives her teammates a lot of value. The synergy she creates in her teams is pretty good, which we will go over right now. I would like to also point out that I stream most days on Twitch. Links in the description. I host giveaways a lot over there. Do definitely check it out. You may win some stuff. Like, comment, subscribe as always.
And with that being said,
let's get to it. JIHNSI is a bit complex of a unit, but once you break it down easy, it's quite simple, which is going to be my job today. All right, let's break down how Inhibitor Lunisha truly functions. What you gotta understand is she likes multicolored teams, as in she likes multiple elements to be with her. She's a spectro, which means you want things that aren't really spectro to help give her certain stacks. Now those stacks obviously gives her more damage. The more you build up, the more damage you can do. It's that simple. Now obviously she's going to prefer off-field damage, which means characters like Yinlin, as you see here, they did give us a Yinlin in the trial. Characters like Yinlin are going to be very good with JIHNSI because they are allowed to do damage off the field, which means she can generate stacks through Yinlin being off field. Right? It's that simple. JIHNSI prefers a quick swap team playstyle. That's typically where she truly shines. Now, as you see here in the trial characters, they gave us characters that can allow this form of playstyle in the form of Yinlin and Baiji. They can just quickly go into the field, do what they gotta do, and swap out to her directly. She has basic shit that every character has. She has normal attacks like everybody else, and she has an E that just dashes and do spectro damage. Very classic. However, there are more than meets the eye. Just like she has the secret form of being a dragon, she has a secret way to unlock it, which is pretty simple. You go 1, 2, 3, and a 4, and you will notice that my E has transformed from normal E that we dashed earlier with to one that was kind of glowing, had feet on it. And you'll notice that was available only for a few seconds, which means you gotta be on your toes there, which means you know what you're about to do. Gotta keep moving. Once you are engaged into the combo, you're very encouraged to just keep clicking buttons, okay? Now, what's this combo? Go 1, 2, 3, 4. Once unlocked, you click the E. She becomes Inhibitor Lunisha, and she starts, moving like she's him. She goes 1, 2, 3, 4 again, and you'll notice there's a new E that is unlocked. Now, this E allows you to do this. You throw a Blue Eyes White Lightning attack. And I'm not gonna lie, that is a clean way to finish a combo. Now, obviously, the more stacks you generate, the more damage you can do. Now, you're gonna look at me and go, well, if she requires this much on-field to do all this, how are your supports supposed to come into the field and keep applying damage, elemental damage that's not spectro? Well, if you'll notice here in the trial characters, they gave us Yinlin. Now, Yinlin's kit allows her to do damage even off field. If you do that, she generates stacks for your JIHNSI, making her gain easier stacks, making Yinlin and characters like Yinlin a very good teammate for JIHNSI. Now, don't think coordinated attackers are the only best teammates for JIHNSI. JIHNSI prefers a quick swap type stuff, which means, say for example, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, you E, right? Now, in this state, you can still switch. You go done, you just do your thing real quick. You go back to her, and then you can do your combo sequence. Still, as you notice, I still had enough time in my Inhibitor Lunisha states. I didn't go back from the form to normal form. I was still in Inhibitor Lunisha form, which means I could still do a lot of damage, even though I switched to Baiji, applied Glacial, gained some stacks, and then swapped back to JIHNSI. Okay? Now, if I were to do this in battle, you'll notice things are going to be a little different. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. You switch, and you'll notice that her bar has changed forms. Now, if I'm to switch while my bar is different, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I'm to switch here, you'll notice I have intro skilled, even though I didn't have no bar. And that's where she truly shines. As you saw, quick swapping is fairly easy with JIHNSI. Now, let's get into the kinda complex problem, which is her combos. Like, what is the most optimal combo? Typically, you want to start off with an ult. I do feel like every character want to do his ult first, which makes it that every move you make from then on makes it so that you get a new ult instead of just gaining energy for nothing. So I always personally prefer to use my ults first and gain energy as I go. You just go ults. You go 1, 2, 3, 4. You switch to something. You give her the ability to get more stacks. You switch back to her again. You finish off your combo, and then you can keep switching back and forth and back and forth. Now you can finish your combo and then switch. I mean, that is also possible. Now JIHNSI has what is known as a unison buff. Now unison buffs is when she switches to a character. It gives him a buff, okay? Now this buff goes back to JIHNSI after you swap back from X character to JIHNSI once again, which allows her to do a free intro skill as well and do more damage. That's technically what you always got to keep an eye on. It's like JIHNSI character, then JIHNSI, from my understanding. So you always want to do 1, 2, 3, 4. You switch 1, 2, 3, 4. Obliterate. Switch to X character. Do stuff real quick. Go back to JIHNSI once again. Do your combos. And go from there. You'll notice I was even on fucking cooldown, which means like you can still do a little bit more stuff with your character here, and you can still be just fine, right? That's technically what you gotta know about JIHNSI. It's as simple as that. Now that we gotten that out of the way, let's get into the build. For echoes, the best one is obviously going to be the Spectro set. That's definitely so complicated. Celestial Lights, you want to get 5 pieces of those. You can get away with a 2-2 with Celestial Light and the Lingering Tunes. You can get away with the 2-2 set there while you get the 5 pieces. As we know, 5 piece is a little tricky. However, they did make some changes to the ecosystem, so we'll see how that goes. For your forecast slot over here, what you want is obviously going to be Jua, the new echo that's been introduced in 1.1. Who would have seen that one coming? It allows you to do a shit ton of spectro damage. Your kit actually does spectro damage, which means he gets to do a lot of damage, making him a very solid option for your JIHNSI. I think it's a bit of a no-brainer to slap Jue there. Like, who would have seen that one coming? That's going to be your forecast. Now for your 3 cost, you want spectro damage. Preferably, you can always make do with attack, but preferably you want spectro damage 2, spectral damage 3 cost, and of course for your 1 cost you just want freaking attack percent. Like, that's very classic DPS stuff. Now let's jump into the weapons real quick. For weapons, to no one's surprise, Ages of Harvest is going to be the best in slot. This is her signature weapon. It gives you crit rate, and from my understanding, this is a weapon that's actually working pretty well even for characters like Calcharo, more so than the Verdant Summit. So this is a very strong unit if you're going to be a Broadblade user, which I personally am. I've always liked Claymore and Genshin, and I see that love still stays in my heart for Broadblades now in Wuthering Waves. So this Broadblade just might be a very good option. We are getting free pulls. Genshin could never, right? Maybe you could be lucky enough to get it. This is obviously going to be a great weapon for your account, hands down. But then again, if you can't and you happen to have the Verdant Summit like I do, well, it's still a pretty good option for your JIHNSI. Don't forget that in Tower of Adversity, which is the end game content, the Spiral Abyss or Memory of Chaos, depending on the game you play, the final levels that you do to always get currency, basically you can switch weapons around, which means one Broadblade is enough. So if you have the Verdant Summit, you're not necessarily forced to get the Age of Harvest, but if you're a collector, I understand. You still always have the standard banner weapon that you can now get. Most of us are probably uni level 45 right now. You can always pick this option. I personally wouldn't recommend it. I still think the sword, the Emerald of Genesis, I think it was called, is always going to be the best option in terms of value. After we've seen in my previous video, go check that out. But Lustrous Razor is an option you can use, but in my opinion, the damage output, it doesn't seem to be worth it, and attack percent stats typically are always power crept in the future. The more weapons you obtain, the more you play the game, the more this becomes pretty irrelevant when it comes to the main stat it gives, in my opinion. Now, if you can get the Battle Pass, however, Autumn Trace is a very fantastic weapon as a Broadblade. If you have Broadblade users, you don't even need these. Like, Autumn Trace is a pretty solid option. Obviously, it doesn't do as much damage as these, but it's a solid unit that can help you with your builds. It has crit rate stats, which is pretty rare right now. So you can consider the Autumn Trace for your Battle Pass option. The Lustrous Razor can be considered a free-to-play options, but it's technically not it. But for the true free-to-play options, I would personally recommend the Broadblade number 41. There is the Helios Cleaver, which is the gotcha weapon. However, the damage difference between Helios Cleaver and Broadblade number 41 is of 8% only according to spreadsheeters. Now, Helios Cleaver obviously wins that. He does 8% more damage than the Broadblade number 41, but this is a gotcha weapon that if you happen to have, use it. If you don't have it, don't sweat it. It's not that big of a deal. It's 8%, like who fucking cares? Get the Broadblade number 41, craft that shit, slap it on your JIHNSI, and it is good. You're doing good. You're doing decent damage. It is fine while you play the game and obtain better gear. Don't stress yourself for it is what I'm trying to say. Like, don't feel like, oh, I gotta get the Lustrous Razor and all that. Think long term, don't think short term. This is how it kind of goes in a gacha game. Gacha games are typically a game of managing resources more so than they are of, you know, getting to play the game and have fun. Like, you want to have fun, but you also got to be careful while you're having fun so that you don't burn your account, if you know what I'm saying. Now that we got the weapons out of the way, let's get into the team comps. For teammates, as we've seen before, even in the trial, they've had Yinlin there, and for good reason. Yinlin allows you to do off-field electro damage, which makes her a pretty straightforward good teammate. Now, Yinlin is a good sub DPS for basically everybody, especially Calcharo, but don't feel pressure to have her with JIHNSI. I do feel like better options like Sanhua are pretty good, as Sanhua buffs your basic attack damage. She's even there with her in the banner for good reason. Even in the lore, they basically work together, and Sanhua protects JIHNSI, and that synergy and that bond they have in the story is shown even in their kit. Sanhua allows you to do more basic attack damage, and as we've seen before, JIHNSI does a lot of basic attacks, which makes Sanhua a pretty good teammate. You're going to be pulling in her banner, you're going to have a bunch of Sanhuas. You don't have to stress too hard over it. Sanhua just might be the best teammate for her, but if you want to be more flashy, Yinlin, and I would personally recommend also Mortefi. Mortefi is a good sub DPS as well. He does fire damage, which means she also gets stacks from him, making him also a pretty good solid support. Now, these would be my three preferred supports. I do think maybe Yang as well could be okay. I mean, you can always swap in, do an E real quick and swap out. I do feel like she's a decent support all around. For more all-rounded supports, you can also go with Jianshin. I still don't own that yet, but I will very soon. Hopefully not by losing a 50-50 in the JIHNSI banner. That'll be hilarious. You can just immediately swap in, do the E counter something or whatever, and then swap back out. Jianshin is always a decent support for your units, but I would recommend her as the third slot. But for sub DPS, I would always recommend these two, or probably Sanhua in my opinion. For free-to-plays, you probably are gonna get one. Come on now. And plus, we got a Sanhua for free before at the start of the game. Like, at the moment you start playing the game, you get a free Sanhua. So Sanhua is always going to be a free-to-play option that everybody has, which makes JIHNSI a even better unit to consider to get for your account. For healers, obviously Verena is going to be pretty recommended. I mean, Verena is a very strong healer, and she's the best healer currently in the game. But do not sleep on Baiji when it comes to JIHNSI. I do feel like Baiji might have somewhat of a better role than Verena, because Baiji, well, she's ice, she's glacial, she can do different element of damage. The problem with Verena is obviously going to be the element. She's also Spectre, just like JIHNSI. If we have a better healer in the future that is a different element than Spectro, JIHNSI is going to be happy with that healer. But as it is right now, I think, in my opinion, you don't have to stress over Verena in her team. You can always go with a Baiji, which I personally might be doing as well. Baiji, just Glacio, allows her to generate more stacks. She can do quick swap stuff as well. Very simple. You don't have to stress over, oh, I got Calcharo with my choice stuff, etc. You don't have to stress over Verena. Baiji is just fine if you're going the JIHNSI route, which I think makes her fantastic. And as you'll notice, Sanhua and Baiji are both units that are given out for totally free. Now, obviously, you don't want to use both because both of them are fucking Glacio, which means you can pick one. And if, say, for example, you go Mortefi, you'll pick Baiji. If you go Sanhua, technically you want Jianshin, in my opinion. That's where things could become a little costly. You can always go Verena, and you don't have to stress over having two elemental units. You can always get away with Verena and just one sub DPS with a different element. Like, you don't have to stress over those stacks. They're not that important to dish out max damage. I do think JIHNSI prefers more of a good flow, a good rotation, more so than having the ability to do max stack, max damage, and just pressing yourself to just be able to perform those. I do feel like a better flow, a more comfortable playstyle is maybe it's going to be what JIHNSI users may want to prefer, in my opinion. But we'll see how things go. We are still in the start of the introduction of her to the game. All right. To sum it up, Mortefi, Yinlin, and Sanhua for sub DPSs. For healers, Verena, Baiji, or Genshin. Preferably Verena, obviously, because she just gives you that much damage and gives you that much attack. But Baiji is still a fine option. Genshin as well, if you want to be crafty, and Yang Yang as well, if you don't have any of these or you just don't want to use Sanhua for X reason. I'm not going to talk about Resonance Chain. They're pretty good. I heard the Resonance Chain 2 is pretty powerful. But personally, I didn't look into them. I don't really care much about them. I mean, if you want to, you can read them. I heard the 2 is good. Then again, what gacha game doesn't have the second resonance chain not good enough? I mean, obviously that's dolphin bait and makes you want to, like, you know, even if you're a low spender, you're like, oh, let me get that. It's a little bit of a trap. It's fine. It's gacha. Okay, just be careful. I'm saying this out loud just for you to be extra careful that shit is done on purpose. So do watch out. I don't know much about the resonance chain. If you want one, I've heard that you want the 2. It's a bit of a game changer. But other than that, like, even at a resonance chain 0, she's a fantastic unit. Anyway, you don't have to stress over them. The games still don't have hardcore shit that makes it that you need them things, right? But if you want to, go ahead. I ain't judging. And that was everything there is to know about JIHNSI. Yes, I've never made a guide before, and yes, I have a thing for dragons, and JIHNSI is probably going to become my favorite character in the whole damn game. Probably after Jian, I don't know, it's going to be a tough contest there. Let me know in the comments below how your pulls went. Are you enjoying JIHNSI? Are you looking forward to Chang-Li? What are your plans for Wuthering Waves? I love to read comments. Like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to do that. And I will see you on the next one. See you.